Howdy-ho, Andrew aka Calfier here. Welcome to the Onion Buns and welcome to another Sunday gaming video. This week we're doing EverQuest 2. So I have a love-hate relationship with this game. So I beta tested, alpha tested, and played the original EverQuest for quite a few years. And it's in my top 5 MMORPGs of all time. EverQuest 2 didn't hit that mark. Not for trying. They had some unique ideas, but I think the biggest problem EverQuest 2 ran into is that it was still trying to be a group-oriented game when the demographic had shifted online and players were looking more for single-player games in a MMORPG setting. No better example than Star Wars: The Old Republic. If you're not doing ops and flashpoints, you never have to group in that game. Not once. And I think that's what people were kind of looking for at this point in time, and why WoW managed to beat out EverQuest and become the game it was. When EverQuest 2 originally started, it was the more popular game than WoW for that first year. EverQuest 2 was kicking WoW's ass. And yeah, WoW they dumbed it down and they made it that you could play it solo player, and they were printing money after that. EverQuest 2 never got to that because they still thought it should be fundamentally a group-orientated game. Now, it wasn't as group mandatory as the original EverQuest was, because you couldn't do anything in the original EverQuest without a group. But it was still group-orientated in a time when people were starting to move away from forced grouping. And I think that was probably the biggest struggle. That and the other struggle. I didn't get to play EverQuest 2. I didn't beta test it, and I did not get to play it originally. I was invited to the beta test, and I had friends playing the game, and I wanted to play with them, but my computer could not handle EverQuest 2. EverQuest 2, when it released, was the most demanding computer game on the market, bar none. And if your system could not handle it, you were SOL. So I forget, I think it took me about 3 or 4 months. So it wasn't a huge amount of time, but I think it was about 3 or 4 months before I managed to upgrade my computer or buy a new computer, I forget which, and they could run EverQuest 2. So I came in after the fact, but my guild was already set up and everything. And that was kind of the downfall for me. That was actually the beginning of the end for me with that guild, is because if you've watched my other videos, I developed my guild around what I had been taught in Neverwinter Nights, and we'll get to that game in these videos. It will be the final video I make on MMORPGs, because I still consider it the best MMORPG ever made. But in Neverwinter Nights on AOL, I was always taught community, guild unity, everything like that. In EverQuest 2, when I got into EverQuest 2, I quickly noticed that the guild I had been running for so many years, without me there, had shifted away from all of that. They were now into greed. They came up with the stupidest, to this day, I consider it quite possibly the stupidest loot rules I've ever heard of, because they were greedy. It was EverQuest 2 brought out raids or operations, as they would be known in Star Wars: The Old Republic or whatever. And the guild the basically goody two-shoes, family-friendly guild I had created, was now telling people, well, we have a core set of raiders, and if somebody doesn't show up, we'll take you, but you can't get any loot until you've raided 5 or 6 times, at which point you can get the leftovers. So we'll all get the first pick, and then whatever's left over, that's what you can ask for. But you can't ask for any of that on your first 5 or 6 raids. And I'm like sitting there going, then why would anyone want to raid with you? And sure enough, their raiding came to a halting stop because of this attitude. But it was so bizarre. The greed just overtook the players that, we are more important than everybody else, and everybody else should feel privileged to play with. That's not how it works, people. So it wasn't a big shock that they're raiding. I actually ended up quitting the guild. I was so disgusted with the greed and the attitude of a great many players, including one woman that, no word of a lie, I had dragged her along with me I met her in Ultima Online, and I dragged her through she wasn't a great player, and I dragged her through every game up to EverQuest 2. And I always made sure, like she got involved, she got taken care of, and everything like that. And then I get into EverQuest 2, and she was one of the main cheerleaders pushing this stupid loot rules that other people don't get loot, only she does. It's like, the hell? So I ended up quitting my own guild and forging my own path after that. But yeah, it was, so like I said, I have mixed feelings on this because, I'd been playing with Core from 1993 to whatever, when was this? I forget now. So this game released in November of 2004. So this would have been 2005 when I called it quits on that guild. So anyway, enough of the guild drama. Let's see what a wiki has to say about EverQuest 2 before I go into more memories. EverQuest 2 is a 3D fantasy, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, MMORPG, originally developed and published by Sony Online Entertainment for Microsoft Windows PCs, and released in November 2004. It is the sequel to the original EverQuest, released 5 years earlier, and features updated graphics and more. Streamlined gameplay compared to previous entry, as well as the abundance of voice acting with contributions from actors such as Christopher Lee, Heather Graham. In February 2015, Sony Online Entertainment parent company, Sony Computer Entertainment, sold it to an investment company, Inception Acquisitions, where it continues to develop and publish the game under its new name, Daybreak Game Company. Well, so the same company that took over the DDO. Interesting. The game is set in an alternate future 500 years after the events of the first EverQuest and is meant to run alongside its predecessor without interfering with the original story. And it did do that. I'll give them full credit for that. It did absolutely do that. It features characters and locations from the original that have been altered by centuries of war and cataclysmic destruction, like Unrest. While the title did receive favorable reviews upon release, it was notably less influential to the genre than its previous installment, and it faced heavy competition from other MMORPGs such as World of Warcraft, which was released 2 weeks after EverQuest 2. The original subscription base, since its launch, a free-to-play version with its own dedicated server was released in 2010 called EverQuest 2 Extended. In November 2011, the subscription service was canceled in favor of making all remaining servers free-to-play with microtransactions as a revenue stream. So there you go. You're all caught up to date on that. So yeah, they absolutely did incorporate some of the old EverQuest locations. The main one that comes to my mind is Unrest. Unfortunately, the Unrest of EverQuest 2 didn't even come close to comparing to the Unrest area of EverQuest. Not even close. It was a raid, or no, it wasn't a raid. It was a group orientated area, but it wasn't as good. So what EverQuest 2 did bring in, however, is crafting. EverQuest 1 really didn't have much crafting in it. It had a few items, but wasn't really heavy crafting. EverQuest 2 was very heavy crafting, and I spent a lot of hours doing that in the game. But there was raids, there was crafting, and there was adventure, and leveling and all the normal stuff you would expect. But it was missing something from its original. It just didn't capture the magic of the original. It had this amazing Drow city, but yeah. The one thing EverQuest 2 did have is housing. And the housing I loved. Now, they did the apartment style housing where you go up, and it was like what I showed you from The Realms by Sierra, is you just go to your apartment, and it's like you go up and you punch in your apartment number or your name, and it teleports you to your apartment. And inside there, though, the decorating of the apartment was phenomenal. And one thing they did that I have always loved in games like this or Final Fantasy 14 or some others have used it is they took quest items from the world that if you got and you put them in your house, they actually became stat bonuses to your character. So you were rewarded ongoing for completing those quests and getting those items. And the other thing that EverQuest really stood out to me is one thing I've always wanted in a game is to have a bookshelf filled with books. And you could do that in EverQuest 2. You could get books, you could make them a house decoration, and you could put them in your bookshelves. And people could pull them down and read them if they were in your house. I thought that was freaking amazing. absolutely amazing. So like that was the strong point of it. The downside was it was mainly a group orientated game in an era where people really didn't want to do much grouping anymore. So it was always a struggle to find a group, especially after you had to be in a guild. If you were an individual player, not gilded, because like I said, I left my guild in this game. I did join another guild and they took me on the raids. I actually did get to see what the raids were, and the raids were decent. They were nothing like you would see in nowadays with Elder Scrolls Online or Star Wars The Old Republic. Like those are the cream of the crop. These were very basic raids, but they were still interesting at the time. And, once I got into a guild that wasn't being driven by greed, it was an interesting time. Beyond that, it's, I don't want to be hard on this game because I did have some fun in this game and I liked the classes. But I always remember when I was guildless because I really couldn't do anything. It was a real struggle to gain levels, to do anything because you didn't have the guild to help you out, I guess would be the best words, to do the adventuring together, have 2, 3, 4 people together, which was part of the problem with my old guild is like when I came in, they had already leveled up some and they were doing raids and I was a newbie, and getting people that I had been carrying for years to come and help me out was, oh my God, was it torture. The only people that ever helped me out in that guild were Sarsar and Tesfira. And you've heard me mention them before. That was it in EverQuest 2. But yeah, it was they were the only people in that guild. The rest of the guild had no time to help a newbie. Like I said, I had created a family-friendly guild, and I think part of my sourness of EverQuest 2 is I watched the guild I had for over a decade had molded collapse into something I didn't recognize. And if you've ever been a guild master, that bothers us. Like you put so much time and effort into a guild and it bothers you to see that happen to your guild. And that's what happened there is when I wasn't around, this is, I guess, the true personality of these people came out. And so, yeah, it was, as for the game, I don't know. It's, I saw what they were going for and I liked a lot of what they went for. But in the end, it was just kind of dull, honestly. It didn't have the wow factor that the original EverQuest had. Like the original, and maybe that was just the time, but when I played the original EverQuest, it grabbed you and it just sucked you right in and you just wanted to play. This is one of those games like I've spoken about where I enjoyed it, but I had no problem turning it off. Okay, I'm done. I got to go do something else now. And to me, that's always an indication that you're not really invested into a game. Like my most cherished memories of gaming are those games where I just couldn't put them down. I knew I needed to put them down, but I couldn't. I wanted to keep playing. Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 were that way. Jade Empire was that way. Deus Ex, Human Revolution. I can't count how many sleepless nights I had on that damn game. Mass Effect Trilogy, Dragon Age Origins. The Witcher, actually The Witcher 1, 2, and 3, but The Witcher 1 specifically. Like all of these games, like I played these games in. And then in the MMORPG genre, we had Neverwinter Nights on AOL. Like I said, we were being charged enormous amounts by AOL, and my highest bill on that game was for 1 month was $800. But I knew people that were paying $1,600. $800 made me physically ill. And I said, nope, I'm not doing that. I am not paying that much money to play a game. But at the time, I was so enamored with the game that I wasn't thinking about the money. And EverQuest was the same way. Well, it had a subscription server, so I never had to worry about that. Dark Age of Camelot, Star Wars The Old Republic at first, and Elder Scrolls Online, like all of these games, I just wanted to keep playing. I just, kept grinding, kept going because they were sucking me in. This game, I had no problem walking away from it. And to me, that's always an indication, as I said, that you're not as invested as you should be or you want to be in these games. And I mean, at the time, it was graphically amazing. Like I said, it was a beast on the PC. It was so demanding that lesser systems were burning up playing it. And I think that ultimately that was one of the reasons why WoW was able to overtake it. Besides the forced grouping, it was not everyone could run this game. So they went to the game that they could run, which was WoW. It was the inferior game, but being the inferior game, it didn't have the system hardware requirements that EverQuest 2 required. So more people flocked to it. It's like nowadays, it's like a great example is Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I have friends that played on the PlayStation, and they scream bloody murder about Cyberpunk. Oh, it's a piece of crap. I can't run this game. I'm like, well, yeah, because you're playing on a console. I looked at the hardware requirements for Cyberpunk 2077, and I had to upgrade my computer at the time, which I did. And I had exactly 3 game-breaking bugs, which were fixed by just rebooting. That's it. The rest of the game played absolutely fine for me. Whereas other people, they were, showing you the screenshots and screaming bloody murder and demanding rebates because their systems could not handle the game. Well, that was basically what was going on with EverQuest 2, is the computers of the era could not handle this game. So those that tried met problems. Hardware problems, and they got frustrated. So they quit, which is understandable. And they went to WoW, which their system demands were like literally half of what EverQuest 2 demanded. So, oh wow, this game plays like a dream. So they loved it. And that I honestly think that and the force grouping in EverQuest 2 is what it did its ultimate demise and allowed WoW to overtake it. Because for that first year, EverQuest 2 was the better game. It wasn't even close. But yeah, and we all know how that turned out in the long run. So anyway, it's like I said, I have good memories and bad memories of this game. The bad memories are more about my guild than about the game itself. The game, it was fun, but it was forgettable, is about the best way I can put it. It was fun, but it was forgettable. As soon as something better came across, and I'm not saying WoW was better because I lasted 2 weeks in WoW before I left that game, but as soon as something better came across, we're out of there. And that was it. But what can you do? It's online. You're always going to run into those people. It's literally impossible to avoid those people. So you got to ignore them. You got to just do your thing and push them off to the side. But it took me a long time to figure that out. I used to let this stuff really eat me up. And now it's just like, okay, lesson learned. But yeah, as for EverQuest 2, it's, I don't know, go try the game if you want. I mean, it's, as I read, it's free to play now. It's microtransactions, and that never thrills me. But it was an interesting game. But yeah, it just, like I said, it was designed to be a group game. And at the time, I don't know if it's changed nowadays, but at the time, people were getting out of that whole force grouping mindset. And yeah, anyway, that's my video reminiscing of EverQuest 2. If you like the video, leave a like, a subscribe, and a share. I'm trying to grow my channel, and a like, a subscribe, and a share does me wonders, and I do appreciate it. Takes 1 second to subscribe, costs you absolutely nothing, helps me immensely. Just hit the subscribe button on the bottom of the screen. Always feel free to leave a comment. I encourage everyone to leave a comment. Were you around at the start of EverQuest 2? What do you remember? What did you like? What did you dislike? Come in, let me know. Remind me. Like, I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot, as you can probably guess. Most of my memories revolve around my old guild. So that kind of taints me on this game. So I have no doubt that I am forgetting a lot about this game because I had drama overriding it. So yeah, if you didn't have that drama and you can come in and correct me, please come in. Tell me what you thought. Also, leaving a comment really does help me with the YouTube algorithm and getting more eyes on my videos. And as always, pew, 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.